Irrigation New Zealand believe the government's investment into water is a step in the right direction, but they believe that a broader strategy, including a focus on water storage and, of course, policy development is much needed. This is following today's announcement from Jacinda Ardern of a further $761 million put into much needed water infrastructure, particularly in urban areas. So joining us now to discuss this and much more is CEO for Irrigation New Zealand, Elizabeth Soal. Good evening, Elizabeth.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So there seems to continuously be a lot of headlines that have water in them. Of course, the Fit for a Better World roadmap yesterday seriously concentrated on water storage, which is fantastic. So where are we still not getting it right?
Well, I think that we are getting it right in terms of some of the individual announcements that we've been seeing coming out of government. So like you say, there's Fit for a Better World roadmap, which came out yesterday, which puts in water storage as a transformational opportunity, and it highlights the investment that has been made thus far through the Provincial Growth Fund into water storage. And then today we've had the announcement around Three Waters. So the government is investing, like you say, millions of dollars into infrastructure development and reform of the Three Waters sector, which is wastewater, drinking water and stormwater. We've also seen the Essential Freshwater Policy Package come out. And we've also seen the development of the Taumata Aroa, which is the new Drinking Water Authority. What we would like to see, though, is something overarching all of these developments, the funding, the policy developments, and the roadmaps into one strategy around water for the whole country, so that we know which direction we're going in. There's still potential for piecemeal projects to get funding and to go ahead, which is great, but we see that there's real opportunity for bringing all those different aspects together under one overarching strategy.
And what would that department, in your mind, that was responsible, focused purely on this water storage, be able to, not the department being focused on water storage, but the department overarching, fundamentally operationally look like?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and it's a tough one to answer, because at the moment, if we look across government, there's multiple departments that have responsibility for aspects around water policy and water management. So we've got Department of Internal Affairs, which does local government, so therefore Three Waters. Ministry for the Environment sets the environmental policies. MPI are responsible for the primary sector, the users of water in terms of irrigation. So we've got a range of government departments that have different responsibilities at the moment, and that's where a overarching sectoral strategy would be good, so that we can better align all the work that's happening across those different government agencies to ensure that they're happening dovetailing together, essentially, and we're not putting in place regulations in one area that are going to prevent or stymie development in another area, for instance.
Have you felt that the government has shifted in the understanding of how water is interlinked from obviously snow through to the catchment at the river mouth, and all of the stakeholders involved with the development of the concept around Three Waters?
Yeah, so Three Waters, as I say, does cover stormwater, drinking water and wastewater, but it is, like you say, primarily an urban focus. It doesn't necessarily encapsulate rural water or water provided in rural areas for irrigation, or even for smaller drinking water community supplies. So we see that there is opportunity to broaden the scope of the mandate around water infrastructure, so that it does include water storage for multiple benefits, not just for urban water, but for the environment, for Māori, for reallocation, for irrigation, for even recreation.
Yes, absolutely. And so intertwined with rural water, and how they are interlinked from a water quality perspective through to an allocation perspective. Do you think that we're getting closer to an understanding of that relationship?
Yeah, we are, and we've seen that the government has announced its Essential Freshwater Package, which focuses on water quality, and that is urban and rural to some extent, but water quantity allocation, so how we determine how water should be used, aside from the water quality impacts of that water use, is yet to be determined, and the government has said that that will be the next round of policy development. So it's going to be really interesting to see how those two work together, and how that, again, like I say, works in with these announcements around infrastructure, with the announcements around water storage for boosting productivity in the primary sector. How is that all going to come together in a cohesive strategy?
The reason I ask that is there is an article out on Farmers Weekly titled "Two Funds to Support River Projects," where the Rangitaki River Catchment Collective Chair Roger Dalrymple has come out saying that there's two identical programs to encourage effectively the same thing. And your push for a water commission and would, of course, encapsulate water in all its aspects, would it not?
That's right. So we're seeing, as I said earlier, potentially piecemeal projects and funding going to individual projects, which is a good thing, but can we do it better strategically so we have investment programs that are bigger and potentially of a wider scale and really guiding localised decision making? So there is the potential under the new water infrastructure and water delivery framework that's been announced today, because we could have joined up regional water authorities. So there is scope under that mechanism to ensure that water investment happens at a larger scale and is able to not be constrained by some of the things that we've seen holding back funding decisions at the local level in the past.
And of course, regulation decisions, the RMA reforms are hot on the table at the moment, and we're seeing some examples of some, ironic situations where Minister for the Environment David Parker has said his reforms would put environment above all else. That's social impact, economic impact. However, when it comes to a situation like water allocation from the Waikato River to Auckland City Council, there's a lot of angry Waikato farmers there who've been sitting waiting in line for some time.
Yeah, that's right. And this is where we're seeing some of the fragmentation of our water, our approach to water management and water policy happening. So we're seeing that because Auckland has an immediate crisis that needs to be addressed, absolutely. What's been in train for a long time are applications to get water out of the Waikato River system. And it's seen that essentially what's happened is that the one that was in the queue for Auckland has kind of jumped ahead to fix the immediate crisis that they're facing. If we had a more integrated approach, we might be able to plan better into the future, because under climate change scenarios, those sort of instances where we're seeing regionalised water shortages are going to happen more often.
Now, lastly, I don't want to obviously politicise water. We've done enough of that over the last 3 to 5 years, Liz. However, you've been sitting, knocking on the door and I'm sure sitting around the table with this coalition government. But have you been having conversations across all parties as they start to really heat up their campaign promises?
Absolutely. So it's a real important focus for us in the lead up to the election, and we'll be releasing our election manifesto shortly, which sets out our sort of 5 key asks of an incoming government and what we would like to see in terms of irrigation and water infrastructure. But certainly we talk to all political parties, whether in government or in opposition, to find out what their priorities are and to really work on behalf of our members to ensure that policies are robust, effective, workable, and that we're really doing what we can to improve the well-being of New Zealand. And we know that irrigation is a critical part of that, and so that's the message that we're pushing.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Chief Executive Elizabeth Soal of Irrigation New Zealand, and a bit of an update there on where their policy direction is lying, and of course, pre-election, but of course off the back of the Fit for a Better World announcement yesterday and today's announcement of $761 million from Jacinda into improved water infrastructure, of course naturally off the back of some of those horrendous situations we saw in Havelock North with an outbreak there in terms of human health.
This is Sarah's Country.